Attention! This video contains full spoilers for the movie that just premiered. Pause now if you haven't seen it. For those who stayed, in the movie, Kara does exactly what she spent the entire story forbidding Ruthye from doing. It completely tears apart the character's moral code, and this is going to divide the fandom for a long time. Stick around until the end, because that is the most important point of this analysis. First of all, this video has full spoilers, and there is no other way to do it. The critiques that need to be made here won't work without diving deep into what the movie does right and what it does wrong. And look, I really wanted to come here and say that the second movie of the new DCU is amazing, but that wouldn't be honest. So let's dive right in.
Supergirl adapts an award-winning DC graphic novel, known for Tom King's and impeccable art from Bilquis Evely y Matias Lopez, and for an adventure that travels across planets in the DC universe, building a unique connection between two characters who become great friends. It's a work that won several awards, which fans expected to see adapted with care, and which arrived at a crucial moment for James Gunn's new universe. After Superman, expectations were high, and that's why the result hurts the way it does. What the movie gets right, and truly gets right, starts with Milly Alcock. She maintains the energy we saw in her cameo in the first movie, but trades the more playful side for heavier, more serious drama. Behind all that rebellious girl who can't stay home because she doesn't fit in anywhere, there is a person who feels lost, with a hole in her chest she doesn't know how to fill.
This silent suffering that Milly builds, in her gestures, in her body language, without needing exaggerated crying scenes, is the movie's greatest merit. And the best moment of the entire movie confirms this: the big Krypton flashback. That is where the story hits its peak, where you truly feel the weight of what Kara carries on her shoulders, everything that was left behind in Krypton and Argo City that stops her from moving forward. Building empathy for the character is the foundation of any good story, and on this specific point, the movie delivers. The problem is what comes next. Because Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, isn't just a story about grief. It's about revenge, and above all, about the connection between Kara and Ruthye, a 13-year-old girl who lost her father and wants blood. And this is exactly where the script starts to crumble, because the movie simply doesn't know what to do with the two characters to create the bond the story demands.
What the movie manages to do is create friction. Supergirl says no killing. Ruthye insists on revenge, and they repeat this cycle throughout the entire narrative. What doesn't evolve is the admiration, the friendship, the way Ruthye should look up to Supergirl as a role model. In the comics, there's a dynamic where Ruthye watches Kara as someone who knows what must be done, caught between admiration and the desire for revenge. That tension is the heart of the story. In the movie, Ruthye is practically a one-note character. She wants revenge. That's it. And there is a structural reason for this. Since the movie was clearly limited by its budget, you can't have a story where they travel across multiple planets creating memories, situations, and moments that build a real friendship. The movie jumps through 2 or 3 major settings, and in the blink of an eye is already on the final planet with the green kryptonite sun. There's no room for the characters to breathe together, and that creates a pacing issue that infects everything. The only scene where this connection actually happens is when Kara tells Ruthye about her past while inside a house. It's a good moment, but notice that the one creating the bond there isn't Ruthye. It's the script placing a mandatory pause on the story's checklist.
Between an action scene in the mercenary city and this moment in the house, the feeling is that someone checked a box on a piece of paper. Okay, they'll connect here. It's not an organic leap that makes the story work. It's just another item on the list. And when the third act arrives, and Ruthye decides not to kill the villain, this moment should be the emotional climax of the movie, the proof that she learned something from Supergirl. But it carries no weight, because we don't feel the friendship between them. There's a scene where Ruthye says she loved meeting Kara, that she feels inspired, and that falls completely flat, because the movie didn't put in the work to earn that scene. The blame doesn't lie with the actresses. The material they had to work with was weak.
If you want to dive into the original graphic novel, which delivers everything the movie promised and failed to, I've left the direct link to Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow on our Amazon storefront in the description and pinned comment. It is an essential read to understand how much potential this material has and how much the adaptation wasted. Also, check out our YouTube shopping shelf down below, featuring the best DC Universe collectibles with exclusive prices for the channel.
Let's talk about the villain, Krem, which is a serious problem. A superhero movie is only as good as its antagonist, and Krem has practically no solo scenes, receives zero development, and exists basically to provide obstacles for the story. He is evil. That is all the movie gives us about him. At one point, he appears obsessed with swords, and that detail is completely abandoned. Later, the movie reveals that his group traffics people, but that information is tossed in without any weight or real consequence to the narrative. And there is a logic problem the movie never resolves. Somehow, Krem figures out Kara is Kryptonian and starts exploiting that weakness. How did he reach that conclusion if she travels through space anonymously, without a suit, and Superman has never traveled through space to help other planets? The movie isn't interested in explaining this. It's convenient for the script, so it happens. This kind of easy fix pops up more than once throughout the story, and it piles up. The contrast becomes glaring when Superman and Lobo show up. Their appearances are brief, but when they pop on screen, you immediately notice the difference.
Superman walks in with that optimism, that smile, that lightness that says everything about who he is without needing a single word of exposition. And Lobo, played by Jason Momoa, is sarcastic, flashy, self-serving, but with a situational reliability that makes the character far richer than any scene Supergirl or Ruthye gets in the entire movie. Lobo is basically Jason Momoa with a new skin, and some people criticize that. I've even criticized it myself in the past. I actually enjoyed seeing him on screen, though I still think some aspects of his look could be improved. But the truth is, he brings so much energy and conviction to the role that he steals the spotlight in every scene he's in. The problem is that, like everything else in this movie, he is also underutilized. He shows up, does a few things, and leaves without a clear purpose within the narrative. It feels like he was included just to introduce the character to the universe and draw in an audience, not because the story actually needed him.
Now we get to the most bothersome point in the entire movie. And here comes the biggest spoiler, so last chance. If for some reason you still haven't seen it and want to preserve this scene, pause now. For those who stayed, the issue of Supergirl's moral code. Kara spends the whole movie telling Ruthye that killing is wrong, that there is another way. She builds her entire relationship with this girl on that principle. And then, in the climax, it is Supergirl herself who kills Krem. Consciously, with the camera showing everything. And here I need to directly compare it to what the graphic novel does, because the difference is fundamental. In the comic, Supergirl holds a sword, about to kill the villain, and it's Ruthye who stops her. They find a punishment described as worse than death. They trap Krem in a state of temporal suspension, which is basically the Phantom Zone. Supergirl's moral code remains intact, and Ruthye truly learns the weight of the choice not to kill. The meaning is the exact opposite of what the movie delivers. You could defend the movie's choice by arguing that Kara does this to take the burden off Ruthye and the women Krem kidnapped. It's a motivation that has some emotional logic. But within the DCU, it is a severe character flaw. Superman and Supergirl need to share a moral code that defines who they are. And now we have a Supergirl who murdered someone. How is she going to look Clark in the eyes after this? The movie didn't bother asking that question, and it should have. Regarding Supergirl's personality in the movie as a whole, she has been reduced to a woman who drinks to cope with grief. And look, that's an interesting starting point. A protagonist drowning her sorrows, running from herself, with a void where her purpose should be, is rich material for a story. The problem is the script never goes beyond that. She's drunk at the beginning, she's drunk in the middle, and at the end, she has an epiphany that should change everything, but it happens through memories she already carried from the start. This is one of the script's biggest structural flaws. Supergirl's moment of catharsis in the third act, when she's weakened by the green sun and needs to find the strength to go on, happens through flashbacks of Clark and Krypto, memories she already had. It's not like she had suppressed these moments. She knew them. So why do they act as an epiphany now and didn't before? What should have made the difference in that moment was a combination of three things. Ruthye by her side, saying how much she learned from her, Clark as an inspiration, and Krypto as an emotional anchor. But Ruthye isn't by her side in that moment. She was captured. And the suit that Ruthye hands Supergirl later, as if she intuitively knew that symbol was important, makes no sense, because Ruthye had never seen Supergirl in costume. At most, she heard about Clark and saw the outfit tossed aside in the ship.
How did she conclude that this suit was what Kara needed? Because the writer needed it to happen. And when you can see the gears turning behind a scene, the scene stops working. The protagonist also has a serious agency problem. Supergirl rarely drives the story. She is pushed by events. Someone goes to her, she accepts or rejects it. Something goes wrong, she reacts with violence. This cycle repeats 3 times in the movie. A protagonist means action, and Supergirl shows very little initiative throughout the narrative. At several points, she relies on third parties, waiting for someone to save or guide her. That is frustrating for the debut film of a character who should be establishing who she is.
Craig Gillespie's direction is another disappointing aspect. In Cruella and I, Tonya, he showed an admirable artistic sensibility for handling emotionally skewed characters without losing popular appeal. He seemed like the perfect choice for a movie about Supergirl's troubled psyche. But here, the directorial choices are far too timid. Kara's melancholy is present, but what sustains it is fragile. And this timidity infects everything, from the portrayal of the villain to the attempts at humor, which never quite find their footing. The action scenes are functional, but rarely thrilling. There are a few inspired moments, especially when the direction opts for longer takes that let Kara's physicality breathe. But even those sections don't escape unscathed. Sometimes the scene is too dark, sometimes the camera punches in so close that clarity vanishes.
And there is a cutting pattern that gets exhausting. A strike starts in one shot, cuts, and lands in another. Repeated throughout an entire fight sequence, the frenzy completely disappears. There is also a visual issue that stands out due to repetition. At least 4 or 5 times throughout the movie, they try to show Supergirl looking powerful using the exact same technique, her flying with a low-angle camera shot. In different settings, but with the same composition, the same angle, the same logic. That should be an exception reserved for specific climax moments. Here, it became a formula.
And there's an issue of tonal identity that the movie never resolves. It isn't dense, bitter, or violent enough to truly feel adult, but it also isn't light or charming enough to be an accessible adventure. It gets stuck in an indecisive middle ground that works for a lot of people, but rarely evokes strong emotions in either direction. A superhero movie needs to know what it wants to be. This one seems to have struggled to decide until the very end of filming. The visual universe does have charm. The cosmic setting with weird planets, intergalactic taverns, and strange creatures fully embraces the space fantasy imagery this story called for. There are moments when the movie gains its own flavor, precisely when it leans into that more fantastical side. The problem is that the level of creativity isn't strong enough to stand out within the subgenre. You don't walk out of the theater feeling like you just saw a grand new universe unfold. It just stays pleasant.
What this movie means for the DCU is an important question. Milly Alcock is a promising Supergirl, and that is what the universe most needs to preserve moving forward. She holds her own with a mix of sarcasm, exhaustion, strength, and vulnerability that breathes life into a character the script failed to utilize properly. The DCU has a good Kara Zor-El. What it needs now is a story worthy of her. The graphic novel was simply too demanding of a material for what the movie managed to deliver, both visually and script-wise. The original work oozes dryness, weirdness, and emotional punch that this adaptation sanded down until it lost its personality. Man, the comic is a true masterpiece, and the result here is a passable movie that could have been so much more. It isn't a disaster, it isn't a massive misstep for the DCU, but it is a waste of potential that stings in a very specific way when you know what the story was capable of.
The score this movie deserves is a 6 out of 10.
It has visible qualities: a confident lead, some visual imagination, a charming universe, and a Krypton flashback that is genuinely good. But it suffers from a weak plot in the most important areas: a formulaic journey, mediocre action, humor that misses the mark, and a third-act decision that tears apart the meaning of the original story. It's a movie with a somewhat indecisive soul about what it wants to be, which is strangely similar to the character herself in that regard. That was the complete breakdown of Supergirl's movie. Now, I want your opinion, and not just any opinion. Do you think Supergirl killing Krem was a bold and valid decision for the DCU, or was it a character flaw that compromises her future? Let me know your argument in the comments down below, because this discussion is going to go deep. If you want to understand where this story came from and why the original graphic novel is so different from what made it to the screen, I left the direct link to Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow on our Amazon storefront in the description and pinned comment. We also have a video here on the channel covering the complete comic saga, and I'll leave it right here for you to watch next. And to make sure you don't miss any reviews of the new DCU, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell. See you next time.